Well, happy holidays, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Harry Brelsford from SMB Nation with our periodic and regular webinar series. This is the fourth quarter analyst report. We'll jump into that in just a moment. As always, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. Enjoyed bumping into several of you just this last couple days at NextGen, the channel company conference down in Anaheim. I thought it was well done, and I enjoyed the chats and recorded a couple of video interviews. Keith Nelson, Josh Liberman, Carl Palachuk, and some others. And we all kind of agree that was the last major industry event of the year, and we can head to the holiday season. Speaking of which, I am going to have a little time in Denver, Colorado, Saturday and Sunday. I believe it's the 22nd and 23rd, and I've reached out to Joe Axney and Vince Torino and a couple of other MSPs. If y'all want to get together at La Loma or something for a holiday beverage, you know how to reach me, but that's a Saturday, Sunday in Denver, sort of a crossover on a trip that we're doing. And use the questions feature to ask your questions. And let's jump into it. I want to kind of paint the picture that we have brought in people from the industry. I'm thinking this might be one of the first times we've tried to do this, that we're trying to bring in experts from different domains that normally may not spend enough time together. So we have Jay McBain, who was from Channelize and Lenovo and IBM, well known in the SMB MSP channel community, and then is now over at Forrester. Myself, my advice is exactly worth what you pay for it. And then Scott Bekker, editor-in-chief at 1105. But Scott, in my heart, you'll always be Redmond Channel Partner Magazine. But I think you got promoted. And then we have Madge from SureWeb. So let's go around the horn. Jay, give us, we have a little bit of time. Give us the fastest 2 minutes in sports on your background. What do you do day-to-day over at Forrester?
I'm still trying to figure out why you're spending all your time in Washington State and Colorado as the two states of choice.
There's a little between the lines there. I know where you're going.
I have been in the channel for 24 going on 25 years now, both on the vendor side as a channel software company, and now I get to be the curmudgeon in chief, trying to analyze all of the trends happening and the things happening. So over 150 channel trade shows a year.
Wow.
And lots of different media companies and all different things going on. So trying to collect that into a set of coherent thoughts for this webinar.
And Jay, hold that thought. I'm going to go off camera for a second because I want to show you what my mirror collection looks like from this last year, Jay. I did 150. I did my darndest, but that's actually going to be my holiday profile photo up on Facebook and Instagram later. Scott Bekker, I don't even know how. 15 years. We have known each other kind of since the beginning.
Yeah. Long time.
For people that don't know Scott, what's your story, sir?
Yeah. So Harry, I probably know you from my association with MCP Magazine. All the way back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's the 90s.
Yeah, you were the SBS guy, at that time, and but I've been covering the Microsoft end of technology since about 1998 with ENT Magazine and Redmond Magazine, and since 2005, I've been running Redmond Channel Partner Magazine, and I still do that. But I'm doing some other things with the RCP's parent company, especially doing some stuff with Redmond Magazine, which is more IT focused, and then we're also spinning up some Redmond Intelligence Service, which is sort of analyst stuff on the Microsoft side. So
sure,
that's what I'm up to.
It's funny you mentioned the SBS thing. I'm wearing my small business server MVP golf shirt from yesteryear, and Scott, it's so funny. I'll forever be the professor on Gilligan's Island as a typecast character that I can't shake. because the conferences I go to, everybody goes, "You're the SBS guy." So, and Scott, you're coming to us out of Baltimore, and I believe is that you're a big baseball fan. I thought it's either baseball or football. Correct me.
More football.
More football.
Yeah. I'm
All
from
right.
Pittsburgh originally, so I'm a Steelers fan, and what started out as sort of a good season is now becoming not so much, but we'll see what happens.
I read this morning we have a 62.9% chance of making the playoffs. So
Sounds like a 538 stat there.
Yeah. Yeah, we got it.
Yep.
Hey, next year let's get that guy on. Let's get Nate on,
It's
and probably
Yeah.
one of the premier mathematicians. So, Madge, go ahead and introduce yourself, and we appreciate you jumping on board because you have a background at CompTIA. What's your story?
Oh, thank you so much, Harry. So hello, everyone. I've been working for the channel for around 13 years, I'd say. I started off my career with Microsoft as product manager for products like Forefront back then, System Center, Windows Server 2008. So it was the nice old days of on-prem world. And then after a few years, I was also a partner account manager for the M&As for the Middle East and Africa region. And I came to Canada exactly 8 years ago now, where I actually started off at SureWeb as channel marketing manager for 3 years. So I was always working with partners. And then I joined CompTIA for the last 3 years and a half as a community manager for the Canadian community and the Australian channel communities of CompTIA. So after 3.5 years with the beautiful world of CompTIA, I came back to my old home, SureWeb, and I'm business development manager and working with strategic partners and customers. So it's an honor to be here and to be back to my old home.
And you brought along a
absolutely. So also with us from the SureWeb family is Michael Slater, who's our technical solutions manager for Cloud PBX. So I'm a cloud and servers guy, but he's our hero for Cloud PBX and unified communications. So thank you for joining us, Michael, as well.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot for having us, guys.
All righty, let's get started. So, Jay, I love these things, for lack of a better word, that you put out as an infographic. First of all, where can people find this information? Then I want to ask you a couple questions about the different buckets.
Yeah, sure. If you Google channel tech stack, it'll come up. Last year's will come up first, I think, and then look for 2019. It'll come up second, and just click on that, and there it is.
All right. And to your point earlier, you made mention that this is more vendor facing and our audience is more MSP partner. However, here's a couple ways I see value in these. One is in the analytics area, I have a Lumascape that kind of has every tool from social to measurement. Looks very similar. This is kind of an established paradigm. And the way I have sold analytics, and this is what I would encourage the MSPs to be thinking about, is that we know best of breed, right? That in these buckets, there's a lot of players, and you can talk to a client and say, the reason you would hire SMB Nation in the analytics areas, we try and carve out, quite frankly, a new niche above and beyond media integration and events. And we like to go and say, listen, we know the 10 tools, right? You're looking at 100 tools on the screen. We know 10 of them really well, and we know what we're doing. And I think there's a chance for MSPs to take that mindset. Now, with that said, Jay, why don't you quickly walk us through the buckets, recognizing that this audience is on the receiving side of all these logos.
I think this industry is kind of a bellwether for what MSPs see when they log into a partner portal. It's also an interesting predictor of what they're going to see in next year's channel programs. So when Microsoft came out this year and made 7 big announcements this summer, helping partners partner with others and how they were managing shadow channels and stuff, a lot of how they automate and scale their programs come through technology tools. So today there's 100,000 software companies. If you break these companies into sub-industry, into geography, into the buyer, line of business buyer, the sector, the segment, the size, it all gets hyper specialized. So here is 106 companies that build channel software for vendors. And it's just a way to look at it. And there's 6 major categories of types of software that these vendors use to deploy their programs to partners. This is how they share their MDF funds. This is what their deal registration system runs on. This is the partner portal, the onboarding, the incentives, the motivation, the loyalty, the education, the training, the certification. So the program has about 90 different components to it that runs across these platforms. So it's just an interesting thing to watch in terms of where these companies are going, where they're seeing success. But I love looking at their roadmaps, which strongly align to what vendors are looking and thinking about in 2019.
Yeah. I want to pull out one logo and have you tell me what they do, because you were the CEO of Channelize under the data bucket on the far right. Fastest 2 minutes in sports. What does Channelize do, and why are they on this list?
Yeah, so Channelize started as a social network, which quickly pivoted to a mobile solution. We thought the portals ought to be on the phone, so 150 companies are on the App Store today. With
Okay.
Channelize as the mobile front end, and then with all the data collected, it's become a data company. So the idea is it's very predictive. What partner is going to win what deal at what time, and then every minute of the day, the chances of winning a deal change. And basically predictive, prescriptive on what you ought to be doing on each deal with each partner. And if you're a channel account manager, what you think of you're going to do that day in the morning may be different than what the system thinks you ought to be doing to get the most out of your channel. And that's really what the company's doing now. And it's flipped over into the sales side as well, just trying to predict overall what deals you're going to be winning, how you're going to close those deals, the deals you've already won, which customers are going to come back to you and when. There's just a very rich set of data that sits there in your warehouse that can become predictive to your success.
And Scott, you made mention in your introduction that you're involved in a new endeavor at 1105 in addition to your existing responsibilities, and that doesn't surprise me. Or is 1105? I see Tech Target up there. Or is 1105 possibly going to appear on this Lumascape next year? Is providing data services or analysis?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the parts that I didn't mention, 1105 has a unit called Profits, which uses algorithms and and a lot of data to make predictions about what companies are going to buy based on what they're looking at. And it's something we've had in the market for about a year and a half. So I'm not sure if that fits into any of these, but that is something where we've been working with data in order to to help with lead generation.
Yeah.
It's just sort of a step forward, from the media landscape.
Well, I agree. I'd call it a natural act because, boy, howdy, print newspapers and investigative journalism, they just aren't what they were. Yeah. Excuse me. I get a little choked up. I miss the old days. Jay, I'm going to quickly go through the next 3 or 4 slides so we get to the good stuff. Give it your best shot on this. What are we talking about here?
So this is just the rest of the infographic. If somebody wants to go and read it, probably in bigger writing than this, but showing the size of the industry, the revenue, and how many people make it up, and went over to Glassdoor and saw what people think of these companies as they leave. You can go forward.
Okay. 77%.
Look at how this is using external data. So I mentioned Glassdoor. I also use LinkedIn. They tell you how these companies are growing in the last 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years. So always companies will tell you that they're doing great, and on a rocket ship, you go to LinkedIn and find they're down 10% year over year in people and down 20% over 2 years. And this is a high predictor of how successful an industry is, and this one's up 18%. And it's interesting when you look at companies, and I would suggest MSPs use LinkedIn for this reason.
Yep.
Is you can use the amount of employees, and I did this at Lenovo and IBM, to create a knowledge worker index. Depending on the industry, depending on the amount of employees, you can tell how many are going to have a PC, how many are going to use digital tools, what the data center is going to look like to support that, what the security needs are. So once you get the employee number, which LinkedIn, by the way, tells you within 95% accuracy, you can then roll that into the level of investment that company ought to be making in IT, the level of services that they should be buying from you, and you could build your own target map, of businesses that are around you that you can go and approach. So really, really important that feeds into this. I looked at where they are in the world. I look at, I take all of their value propositions. I dump it into a little tool on the web, which is free, which kicks out the little word chart here of
bubble. Yep.
words. So using these things, everything I do here is free on the web as well. And in terms of creating these graphics, you can go ahead.
Yep. And you're predicting an uptick in M&A.
Yeah, and M&A has been strong. So I did this last year as well, about 100 different companies. 14% of them were acquired. So that just tells you in this one little microcosm, there's a 14% M&A rate. We got shocked, I think, last month when at IT Nation, the chart was shown that 70% of MSPs are looking for M&A activity in the next 5 years. Wow. It won't be that high, but it's definitely something that's growing and a key trend.
Well, what Joe Panettiere had commented on Facebook, and unfortunately, by the way, we reached out to Joe, and he's busy wrapping up end of year, but he wrote a very kind note that he was unable to participate. But from IT Nation, he thought it was, when you get right down to it, it's maybe 100% of MSPs are interested in M&A, and in that sense, if anyone on the line today wants to buy SMB Nation for, I don't know, let's 100 million by 5 p.m. I'll throw in the house in the car. Okay. So we're all ready to do that. All right, let's talk security. So security is the proverbial evergreen topic, but this last year and headed into the new year, it seems it's become a roar more than usual with the adoption of the MSSP, so Managed Security Solution Provider model. And even yesterday at NextGen, the conference in Anaheim for MSPs, it's always fun to walk the floor. It's fun to walk the floor and see what's hot and what's not. And it was, if I had to say a quorum was formed, it was security. Scott Bekker, I'm going to call out to you because you write thoughtful. I've never thought of you as CNN with breaking news on every slider that comes across the screen, but you do more thoughtful analysis. Let me ask you the obvious: is 2019 the year of security? What are you seeing?
I think the short answer is yes, just like sort of 2018 was in 2017. What I've really been thinking about lately is that the technology challenges in security are still incredibly important, and there's a lot of exciting work going on in the ISV community there, and with the big security vendors, and they're constantly tightening up their products and finding links and ways to block threats. But a lot of that is sort of the hackers getting finding holes in the code and sort of traditional exploits. But so much of the big security breaches, so many of the big security breaches that are in the news these days are really just straight up phishing attacks. The most obvious example is, John Podesta, that case is still roiling through, the American political system. But that was just a phishing attack. And a lot of the most sophisticated attackers are spending their time just crafting email, that looks realistic, or and that they can get in with. So just, for me, one of the big themes I think next year is looking at how organizations sort of blend their spending between, sort of the traditional technical fixes, which are still incredibly important, and anything that you leave open, you're going to have problems with. But also just, the user training and some of the efforts on that side to block some of those social engineering attacks.
Do you have over at RCP Mag, is one of your buckets, one of your links on the left or right, security? Is that one of the pillar coverage areas? You know how you have Office 365 and some other pillars?
Yeah, it definitely is on Redmond, and we covered a fair amount on RCP.
Okay. And Madge, yesterday, I believe it was, in our rehearsal, we talked about your time at CompTIA, and I believe you indicated the number one issue facing the industry is recruitment of talent. And it would seem that that's the appropriate time to bring up that conversation with security. Could you kind of, let's do a redo on that conversation, what you were seeing at CompTIA and what CompTIA is trying to do in terms of talent?
Oh, that's thank you, Harry. That's always was the biggest topic, whether it's through a survey or getting a board to sit together and to think what the biggest issue facing the U.S., Canada, North America in general, and the world, recruitment and the skills gap in general was always the number one topic. So we can definitely see that the demand is outstripping supply, and a lot of vendors have open positions, and they're just not giving out the jobs because they're asking for too much. So one big thing that we were always trying to do at CompTIA is to try and kind of from one side educate vendors and recruiters in general to kind of be a little bit more flexible in taking a step back and training, educating, and maybe even considering, and that was something that we were very actually loud about, considering hiring people that don't even have a higher degree of education, but giving them the alternative certifications, of course, like CompTIA's A+ and Microsoft certifications and whatnot, because these are really the levels of, like, the types of education that give them on-job training. And from one side, there are people looking for jobs, but they're not getting hired. And this was definitely one of the big gaps and one of the things that CompTIA was always very loud about. I'd also like to take a step back and second Scott on the importance of end customer training and education, also educating the end customers on building processes and procedures about how to manage threats after they happen. So for example, like with Sony and what happened with them, they knew that they had a problem, but they didn't have a policy of dealing with that problem, right? And there was another thing as well at CompTIA that also can tackle both the skills side as well as the offerings and the way that partners approach their end customers. And we also see that internally at SureWeb, not just at CompTIA, is that the majority of the channel are still taking a look at security products in a traditional type of approach, where they're offering like mostly more than 80% of their product stack is antivirus engines, firewalls, and traditional models and security products. Even for us, like when we have great products at SureWeb that can attach to Office 365, like for example, our Office Protect SKU that we created, it's our own IP. It's only a $1 attach for any Office 365 bundle, and it really gives a very strong understanding of the reporting, of the analytics behind the scene, but in very easy human language. These are solutions, also other solutions that we never see our partners, and we have 10,000 partners worldwide. We never see them asking for as much as we'd like to, but once we have the discussion, we really see that it's a very easy attach. It helps generate more revenue, and of course it helps protect customers in more modern ways that really suit today's world. For example, email encryption, data leak prevention, and data loss prevention solutions. They're all products that cost like $2 attach to whatever you're offering, and they provide security that can really manage threats and problems before they happen, compared to having engines that detect viruses going on or firewalls that detect attacks while they're happening, right?
Cool.
Also, yeah, thank you. All right.
All right. Hey, Jay, I want to ask you sort of a sector question because, I think we've had these talks. I play CNBC in the background, and I'm looking at the performance of the healthcare sector, defense, energy. As you know, I have business interest, very small business interest, but outside the SMB channel. And one of the talks you and I have had, I believe it was casually, was sort of the profitability of the different vendors and ISVs in the channel. And my question to you is security sort of the number one most profitable sector within the channel when you look at, marketing services and CRM and that kind of thing? Where does security line up in your opinion?
Yeah, it ranks very high. It's not number one today, but it ranks very high. So we saw a number of key things this year, and just recently, like last week, for example, it was shown that the 5-year growth of managed services is now single digits.
Yep.
So we've been, for 15 years, we've been at a double digit, and at the very, very beginning, a triple digit growing business. And what managed service providers are doing in this consolidating, price compressing market is looking on how to raise margins. So in 2018, the average margin today of a managed service provider is 17%. 96% of them cannot scale past 10 people.
Yeah.
And there's probably two components to that, but one is the average price is somewhere between 110 and 120 for managed services. A lot of managed service providers are giving away security for free, which is a mistake. And the only way to really get past 20% or 30% profitability today is getting those contracts up to $150 and focusing on the 6 layers of cybersecurity and maybe even 1 layer of physical security on top of that to get these contracts back up, to get to a profitable level where you can start to scale the business. And so the numbers are shrinking in terms of the market size. I think we hit about 23% of all customers now are willing or able or are currently outsourcing their IT, and you're not going to see a lot of growth from there. That's probably going to be a stable number for the next decade. And so now the fight is, how do you raise your average unit revenue, average price per customer, average per seat? And security is probably the number one extension onto your current line card or portfolio.
Yep, I would concur. Let's move on to IoT. So I've warmed up to IoT. Folks, if you want to, at your leisure, not right now, but make a side note to go to the SMB Nation channel at YouTube, you'll see that I gave it a fair amount of coverage starting with the SolarWinds conference in Scottsdale, where they had the founder of Geek Squad, Robert Stevens, give a keynote. He talked about Augury. Augury is a IoT ISV. I interview him, and you can watch that, but it listens to sounds much like humans do when you start your jalopy and it's warming up, and your ear tells you, hey, something's wrong with my car, right? That just, I'm going to stop by the gas station. Something's wrong. And in fact, it could be, I don't know, once you start driving a low tire and it just doesn't sound right. That's an IoT play using sound waves, and it's intuitive to what we do. I went on to do about a half a dozen interviews at the Ingram Micro Conference in Washington, D.C. Ingram won. They've made IoT a pillar. So, Bekker, what's your coverage on IoT? I've warmed up to it. I think it's actually real now.
Yeah, I agree that it is. In fact, I just wrote a story about it a week ago. I was at our Live 360 conference in Orlando, which is our big show,
Okay.
and there was a session there by Eric Boyd, who's a Microsoft MVP, regional director, and he was just going through IoT and talking about how it's pretty much like web and mobile. It's just a factor, especially if you're dealing with customers in manufacturing or agriculture, a bunch of sectors. It's just they've got the devices now, they're out there. I come at things from a Microsoft framework standpoint, and a lot of the tools that Microsoft has available in Azure are pretty strong, and they're adding to that portfolio constantly. So, whereas some of the early efforts like IoT Central, which was interesting, but it's more of a limited sort of SaaS kind of kick the tires pilot kind of setup were interesting, just for playing around, with the IoT Sphere initiative that they've got, and the IoT Hub. There are a lot of tools out there that that Microsoft partners, especially, can take advantage of pretty easily with the expertise that they have. From an MSP standpoint, I think it's really important. Jay was just talking about the limits on profitability, and it's so important to have IP of some sort. So if you've got a potential IoT solution that you can do from soup to nuts, and
Yep.
do the installation project as well as the ongoing maintenance, that's great. I think there are also opportunities for MSPs in IoT just as far as managing the devices. I mean, they're essentially computers and things that need to be managed. But that's a tougher play. The group that bought the IoT may not really be thinking about the MSP as somebody with that sort of expertise. So you've got to push yourself forward, and then there are profitability questions about how many times the devices need to be fixed out in the field, and whether you really want to take that on. But it's definitely an interesting opportunity there for growth.
Yeah. Jay, coverage area for you, insights forward looking on IoT?
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably, one out of every 5 conversations I have today. And, managed service providers, VARs, resellers are starting to figure out about a dozen different services wrapped around it that they can make money. The average margin today is about 40 to 75% in these deployments, which is big. When we talked about average margins being at 17 today. So they're, installing, implementing, integrating, securing, making compliant. They're working on the business continuity piece, the monitoring side of it, but there's a huge infrastructure, networking, more traditional side of this that goes right into the core of the skill set that's been a big opportunity. And there are very industry specific plays, but the number one opportunity is actually around application development.
Yeah.
And this is, trying to build a company to be another Microsoft. This is not building a traditional software company. In many cases, this is just codifying your IP. There's a set of workflows or business logic that you can actually, in a no-code, low-code environment, go wrap that into a product, put it on a marketplace or several marketplaces, get yourself a URL from GoDaddy, and all of a sudden you've codified your IP. The valuation of that subset of your business, over time might be more than the valuation of your MSP, and could get outside interest and funding, but it has to be hyper specialized and very specific. But we're seeing the rise of RPA, for example, robotic process automation, which has nothing to do with robots. It's all software. And not a lot of people know this, but the fastest growing enterprise software company in the history of the planet is not Microsoft. It's not Salesforce. It's not Slack. It's a RPA company called UiPath. And these are companies that are using these environments to do what they do every day, put it into code, get it into marketplaces, get it part of the customer solution, part of their stack. And it's an automatic entry point to getting those downstream services that I just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Let's keep moving on. So here is something, my sentiments, my investor sentiments, and again, Jay, I've had probably too many chit chats with you over the years about this, but I look at sectors. I have to wake up thinking like an investor. to keep my head straight as an entrepreneur. And where am I going to put my time? It's not even my money so much as my time. And my sentiments have shifted to slightly negative on blockchain, and I shifted to positive on IoT this year. And I'm going to continue that because with blockchain, Scott, to your point about how to actually make money in the last slide, so blockchain is really cool, right? I really like the study of blockchain, and we did 3 webinars this year on blockchain, and we got some feedback from our audience, the audience that's here today, that, guys, maybe I've had my fill of blockchain for a while. Let's put blockchain back up on the shelf for SMB MSPs, because it is cool, and I could spend all afternoon playing with it, and we talked about how to mine cryptocurrency and all that, but doggone it, Mama Bear expects a paycheck on the 1st and the 15th. And that's kind of my take. Is I'm personally going to continue to follow this bucket, but we're not there in 19. Please, flames are welcome. Who wants to go first? Bekker, what's your take on blockchain, and can I meet payroll on the 1st and 15th?
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you said, just because it's really interesting, and it's sort of, you can visualize the applications in finance and contracts. But for the SMB MSP, I haven't seen a lot that's really baked. That's a clear opportunity they can go with, and maybe Jay has or Maj, but
yeah,
I haven't seen it yet.
Let's go around the horn. Jay, you seeing money makers and booty shakers and blockchain in 19?
Yeah, I actually am vice chair of the emerging technologies community at CompTIA. We put this out to vote. We went out to all the VARs and MSPs as part of CompTIA and said, hey, between AI and AR and VR and automation and IoT, and with all these technologies, 3D print and drones and everything hitting you at once, where do you put blockchain? And I think they ranked it 8th. It's not a near-term opportunity. And today, it's not really a profitable opportunity. So, some of the big financial companies are looking at this, but traditional MSPs are not part of those conversations. And there's no near-term, part numbers to sell or things to service. As a consumer, however, when 17 companies make money every time I swipe my credit card, there's something broken. And as a consumer, when I'm on the web consuming things at micro levels, when I read an article, I want to pay a nickel. There's just no relevant way out there to pay a nickel for it today, and not sign up to 27 subscription services to do that.
Yeah.
We know that 10 years from now, this will revolutionize and pretty well disrupt the entire, probably 3 or 4 industries. And, in the near term, the next 5 years, I think it's on the shelf for the channel.
And just to wrap on this, what folks, if you again go up to SMB Nation on YouTube, and you'll see the 3 webinars on blockchain, quite well done. Think of blockchain as a public ledger that's a single source of truth. And so there's 2 applications that are easy to visualize. One would be the illicit drug trade, where they have to operate outside the banking system, and that even includes the semi-legal drug trade. Well, I'm not going to say drugs, but the cannabis trade in the U.S. There's states that will take their tax payments via crypto. The other is shipping. Wow. So shipping from overseas with that supply chain or that workflow to track those containers. And so blockchain, public ledger, single source of truth that we agree to use. All right, my favorite slide of today is, and the audience is just going to eat this up, because as you guys know, the SMB Nation audience wakes up geek first, and then, oh yeah, by the way, it gets into the late afternoon, and sheesh, I guess I need to make some money. I doggone it, I forgot about that again. And Mama Bear has a way of reminding you that winter semester tuition is in fact due this week. So, but this is where I cut my teeth. And Scott, this would have gone back to MCP Mag when I was writing, and in fact, taking the MCSE exams in the 90s. I was working for God, was it Linda Briggs?
Yeah.
Her sidekick, Diane Schaffhauser, I believe it was.
Yep.
And so I lived and breathed this. NetWare had an exam on this, the 7 layers of the OSI model. What I like to do on this slide is talk about layer 7. And what layer 7 is the application layer. And what that means for today's purposes is if I go back to, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it, I'll just hold it up, but one of my SBS books from yesteryear, early in all of my SBS books, early on, and I'm not going to be able to go to the page dynamically, but the whole reason we were here with SBS was layer 7. And I have a chart that shows, yes, SBS had SQL Server, it had proxy server ISA, it had the server kernel, yada, 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 had about, half a dozen things. But at the end of the drawing, the whole reason we were here was essentially dashboarding, storytelling, and reporting through an application such as, I believe I've used the examples of accounting. And that's why you were there, was to not only create data, secure data, but turn data into information. And so fast forward the movie to layer 7 with the application layer, and this is a question for Scott Bekker, is that, you've done some work in this area, and I think you've done it with a client or two. Are Joe, the computer guys, and Jane, the computer ladies, are they really willing to go out and do dynamic CRM, or is that just a different animal to make their money?
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure where you're going with that, but I can actually answer the question. That was great. Yeah, but it's definitely a good question about Dynamics, 365. That's one of the opportunities that Microsoft, points partners to. A lot of the Office 365 partners. We spend a lot of time in the Cloud Solution Provider program, covering that. And a couple years ago, it was 100% Office 365. Maybe last year it was around, I think, 80% Office 365, with the other 20% being everything else that Microsoft offers in the cloud. Some of that being Dynamics 365. They're pointing partners toward Dynamics 365 and Azure. It's a tough sell for a lot of partners who have, a lot of the Office 365 partners are, Exchange migration specialists. They've been doing that for 15 years. They made the simple transition to, Office 365. But Dynamics is very different. It involves business processes. It's not even a technology conversation a lot of times with the clients. Some partners can do that. Others, I think, some of the things that Jay was mentioning about, Microsoft's announcements this summer, the P2P efforts, I think, are really critical in Dynamics 365. If you're a CSP partner, an MSP, and you're doing Office 365 business and you want to expand into Dynamics 365, find another partner who's, does implementations.
And P2P is partner to partner.
Yeah.
Let me just clarify.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, P2P, partner to partner. Find another partner who can do the implementation, work with the customer on the business process, do the setup, because it's not just, you can point and click your way into it, but then you have a disastrous business process on the back end. There's just so much business modeling knowledge that has to happen. And there are also some of the big, indirect providers can help you with it. SureWeb being one.
Well,
exactly.
and that's let's hand that off, Madge, and your buddy. If you want to go ahead and make mention of your play, because not only do you have that motion at SureWeb, but you also did a webinar with Versium, a data provider that uses an API to do record appends and overlays inside Dynamics to add value. I've worked with Versium, but why don't you tell us what SureWeb's view of the world is for MSP to play in this reindeer game?
Absolutely. One of the things that I love the most about coming back to ShareWeb after 3 years is that we finally have a P2P program, especially for Dynamics 365. That was something I always wanted to do as a channel manager back then, to get partners to work together and cross intersect the ecosystem, which is the reality of what is happening in the channel today. If like even at CompTIA, we were thinking that even the word channel is starting to be a little bit out of date because of the many hats and open opportunities of partners to come together to tackle opportunities. So that's one thing that I'm very happy that we have as a program with ShareWeb for Dynamics 365, and we're reaching out to all of our already existing base of Office 365 resellers, and we're telling them, hey, we know the strongest, and we're also looking for the strongest Dynamics 365 in each and every city and state. And we want to have these as the leader supports, and we have programs where if you have an opportunity, don't try to tackle at least the first one yourself. Take on, we will match you with one of the partners. We will have the technology specialist. And this kind of goes across the board, thinking of emerging technologies as a whole, with artificial intelligence, with AI. That's me stepping outside of the SureWeb world and thinking of today's world as a whole. Partners are really coming together to tackle, especially the most successful and the strongest ones, to tackle opportunities together instead of being in a place where their customers can look outside for new partners that do something that they want, especially that the business units now are very knowledgeable about the exact products that they want to buy and purchase, and they're going out there and looking for it, whereas the traditional reseller can be still talking to the CIO or to the technology team. And that's another quick point that I'd like to point across from my CompTIA world, is that my number one request as a community manager from the channel was always, how do I train my technology salespeople to really hold business discussions instead of talking zeros and ones, right? And this is one thing that I'd like to invite everyone to go on the CompTIA world. All of these things are absolutely free of charge. There's so many great trainings out there that can help you just know how to perfectly position the business value of technology solutions in general, compared to talking to the IT team, because we definitely see a power shift go towards these business units, and they're talking to partners outside of the ones that you're already having discussions with right now, right? So yeah.
No, good point. I mean, I think what I'll do is finally get that PhD I never did get and create layer. I'm going to create layer 8. I'm going to create layer 8 of this model, which would be business, right? But I'll tell you what, I just got pinged from Jenny in the radio control room. I've only got 10 minutes left. I knew this would happen. So we're going to have to kind of shift. Jay, I'm going to keep you on hold on this slide because I'm going to have to shift and play a little more lightning round. I'll knock out AI and the couple slides that are a little more relevant that I want to get to. But AI, here's my frustration, gang, is most everyone on this call knows one of my investment rounds was with a big data startup for 2 years in Seattle. Lead scores with the letter Z. You're welcome to look them up. They're doing great. And it was called Big Data. And then while I was there, it became machine learning. And it actually made machine learning was math. I mean, that actually made sense. And then it became this freaky Star Wars name, or Carlos Castaneda on top of mountaintops in Mexico, and I'll leave it at that, called AI. And it's just a little too freaky for me. I get frustrated by the acronyms and how fast the industry shifts the dialect or the dialogue. Is AI a thing? Yes, to be continued. We'll tackle it in 19. I want to get to this slide, the MSP isms. So this is kind of an open forum slide, probably the last important slide in my deck. And Jay, now I'm going to call back out to you because you just posted up on LinkedIn. You're a prolific poster on LinkedIn, thank you. And you just had a conversation about the shadow channel. So go, Jay.
Yeah, so I mean, the technology buying market has changed a lot in the last 18 months. So 65% of all technology dollars and decisions are now happening outside of IT. The traditional infrastructure services and, let's say, the Office 365 productivity side is still, in the domain of IT. But when we talked about Dynamics, when we talk about Salesforce and NetSuite and Workday and Marketo and 100 other foundational platforms, it's all happening outside of IT.
Yeah.
So, the biggest opportunity and what's driving every company in every industry to become a technology services firm is this opportunity. We talked about lower margins in MSP at 17%. In this new buying cycle, it's somewhere between 40 and 75% margins. Solving business problems, getting in front of the business buyer, participating in these never-ending integration projects are very rich, and the valuations of these companies are through the roof. They're getting bought every day by the likes of IBM or Accenture and others. And for MSPs, this is almost a parallel path. You've got it locked down, you get the infrastructure services, but quickly get over to the 10 lines of business in every one of your customers and every one of your prospects. Go to the guest book at the front reception and see who's signing in and who they're meeting with. You're going to find 50 other companies who may look like accountants or digital agencies or ecosystem partners or something else in there talking tech with these people now that spend 51% of their time on tech. Everybody's a technology person in a technology company with technology services, as part of their conversation. So you've got to go beyond the conversations you're in today.
Yep. Bekker, you want to overlay on top of that with your research, your work?
Yeah, no, that was really interesting, and that whole idea of the shadow channel, and it's one of the things that we try to, and it's going to be something we're pushing on in 2019, is just helping our readers figure out how to have that, how to have those conversations, how to get out of those tech silos that they're in, and get into some of these these more profitable conversations.
Yep. Let's move on. Have just 5 minutes left. Forgive me. UCaaS. So first I want to set the table on UCaaS. SMB Nation has, 2005. We have, it's so scary, almost coming up on 15 years of experience in VoIP. We had a sister brand called Telefonation, Response Point, Cisco UC 300 series, etc. So I've been VoIPed, and I've been frustrated for 15 years that we just can't get the marriage between data and voice. In fact, we had invited Doug Green on today. He was unable to make it, but Doug Green from Telcom Reseller out of Portland, who covers that world. And in fact, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on the screen. I'll hold it up. But tomorrow I have an interview with Dan Schwab at D&H. They've just reported their performance, 21% growth overall. But what they're saying right here is 55% growth in UC and collaboration. And again, this is one of my coverage areas. And, if I can't be credible and I can't be independent, then I should go home and do something else for a living. That was a little high from what I've seen with some other players in the game. So I'm going to double click down on that tomorrow, have it up next week for you guys as a video blog interview. So I want this slide to be SureWeb, and SureWeb, if you don't mind, not so much a pitch about what you guys are doing. And I'm happy to give a link off in the thank you email for people to learn more about your solution. But can you tell me about the marriage between the computer guy and the telephone guy? Forgive the gender reference. And then feel free to weave in what your solution is. Fastest 2 minutes in sports, if you don't mind.
All right, Mike, that's all yours.
2 minutes in sports, I love it. So again, kind of what you pointed out, Harry, is a lot what I said at Accelerate. I know you were at our conference and you saw my thing, right? Where originally when I started and when you started, the telecom guy was blue collar, and now the IT guy was a guy in a dress shirt, and now they're both the same guy in skinny jeans and a plaid shirt. right, doing the same work in the same office. It's all consolidating.
Right.
But you're right. No one's really figured out a way to kind of get that data together. I mean, there's a multitude of reasons why I think that's such a struggle. I think the biggest reason why is that for a long time they were so incredibly separated, and only because everything is really IP based and it's all packets, people can even get their mind around the idea that, wow, these are things that everybody should be doing. Another factor in the space that makes it difficult to do it well is the consolidation. So UCAS, even 5 years ago, had a whole bunch of front runners, right? So ShoreTel was like leading the charge, like we're going to be the guys that are going to do this. And now that's Mitel, which is now Rackspace. So all these vendors that were in a position to do something and were promising this best tech and the best ability are disappearing quicker than anyone else could do it. And then on the flip side of that, you have people who weren't in that space, like Microsoft, who've been getting into the game and then buying Skype and then relaunching it as Teams.
Yep.
And even on that subject, I think, and again, this is maybe my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, is I think that all of telecom and the direction everything is going in is everybody is looking for that Slack experience, right? Everybody's chasing that market, and that's where the big drive is going to be. So everybody's chasing after that. So, SureWeb, the one thing I will say is we get that because we deal so much with the licensing part. That's what we see. Everybody wants to switch to that. And because of that Slack and that Teams experience, the entire market is going to become a world where unless you're tied into that world and you're integrating telephony into that part of the data, nobody's going to buy your stuff. No one's going to resell it. No one's going to purchase it. It's going to be, how do you integrate into Slack? How do you integrate into Teams? How do you integrate into Cisco Spark? Like, what's your reaction to that? That's the future of UC, in my opinion. That's where everything's going.
And were you up on stage in Montreal when I was harassing you about size of partner? Okay, so we have met. Probably not under the most friendly circuit. I'm just doing my day job, brother. Just doing my day job.
No problem, man. I love tough questions. That's okay.
But what I liked, and then if you don't mind, I need to move on. But what I liked was I asked the question about size of partner because, again, my coverage, my experience is it takes a mid-sized partner or above to really nail telephony. And I believe your response was the solution that I'm going to email out to the attendees today. You right-sized it for small business. Is that a proper recollection?
That's correct. And again, because we're very conscious, and you should be, any vendor, of what your average deployment size is. So sure, it makes no secret that we're SMB guys, right? That's our bread and butter. That's our partner base. And the problem a lot of big vendors, I think, get, and this is an industry problem, is everybody looks at the Fortune 500 and says we need a UC solution for them, when they're not even going to buy it themselves because compliance, security, and all these other reasons. Yep. So I would stick to my guns and say we've done a very good job. And the simple fact is that you leverage Microsoft for the UC part, and then you focus on the part they don't do as well, which is the actual telephone club PBX part. So everybody stays in their sphere of influence and does what they do well. That's my thought process.
Fair enough. Last topic. And I want to call out to Jay on this one, followed by Bekker, and we'll call it good. This is my last slide. So Jay, you posted up recently that you, of the mini conferences you go to, you did a drop by within the last 2 weeks at an event, and one of the conversations is Win7 Migration. So I went and did a little research because SMB Nation, we rode the XP migration horse hard 4 years ago, and I have some feelings about that. But it's coming up. The date I found in my research is it's a year out, which is fine, right? We should be planning now. But Jay, what's the story on the opportunity for Win7?
Yeah, I dropped by a big HP partner event, HP Inc., and it brought me back to the 17 years that I sold laptops and desktops and went through these migrations, starting, I think, with Windows 95 was my first. Trying to get people off Windows 3.1. But
well, that was an easy sell.
Yeah, I was one of the ones at midnight at Best Buy, getting my first copy. But that takes me back. I'll say though that they're always a little bit overhyped. The numbers, I think, were $25 billion in opportunity, are always overstated. That being said, there is a reason to call from a sales and marketing perspective that MSPs need. Going through the security discussion we did and privacy and everything else happening in this world, it behooves customers to think through these things. And for many, it does drive cycles and refresh cycles. And if it only works, 2 out of 3, or 2 or 3 out of 10 conversations, that might be 2 or 3 more deals than you might have had, without an impending event like this. So I would suggest leveraging it, but just don't expect 100%, lead generation.
Yeah. And Bekker, I'm going to call on you next. I just want to, before I forget, I just want to slip in. Last night when I landed from John Wayne Airport back in Seattle, and I was at Wally Park, and I went to pay my bill with my Groupon coupon. The point of sale, she had the screensaver was Windows XP. I kid you not.
And you'll see that on point of sale. Yep.
I tried to take a photo, but she moved the mouse.
No, I think
Bekker, you have the high honor of taking us out basically of the webinar with your thoughts on the Win7 migration coverage area for you, either at Redmond or Redmond Channel.
Yeah, no, I echo a lot of Jay's points. I thought he summed up, both the size of the opportunity and how it is big, even if it's not quite as big as it's hyped to be. I guess my only point about it would be this is probably the last great migration, with the way that Windows 10 was set up, and barely anyone uses Windows 8. So this is sort of the last big one, of this type that we'll see, and I'm sure we'll see Windows 7 for many, many more years to come on retail point of sales and things like that. But yeah, big opportunity.
Okay, cool. And I have a couple questions, folks. If everyone can just stay on 2 more minutes. Boy, there's a lot of questions, primarily from my main man, Jason Harrison, who I recently did an interview with. It's on my main page at SMB Nation. He's out of the Carolinas. Jason, I'll hit you offline on your observations. I appreciate it. Rich Samansky's asking, and I believe this might be for Jay. Jay, what was the name of the RPA company that is fastest growing?
UiPath, second to Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere. Those are the 3 companies growing by triple digits right now.
Okay, great. And okay, Jason, I'm going to give you. I appreciate you participating, my main man, Jason Harrison. I'll hit you back offline with some answers and acknowledgments, but I do like this very last one from you, where you're saying we're doing Win7 to Win10 migrations to Mac OS. That's actually part of the interview on the main page up at SMB Nation with Jason Harrison and myself as his practice on the Macintosh. So with that said, we do try to be timely. It is 5 minutes over. I want to wish everybody an amazing holiday season. I want to thank the panelists, Madge and Scott and Jay. Thank you very much. Great to bring the community together. Let's do more of this in 19. I think we're all richer for it, and happy to participate as I'm able. Jenny in the radio control room, your holiday gifts in the mail. All right, Jenny, go ahead and take us out. Everybody have a great day.
I guess we're still here.
There we go.